Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Town of Queensbury Planning Board meeting for Tuesday, August 25th, 2020. This is our second meeting for the month of August, our 11th meeting for this year, and our 7th meeting with the temporary, hopefully, COVID guidelines. We have projects this evening that have public hearings, and for those who are unable to attend in person this evening, the town has provided a phone number for you so that you can call in and make public comment. Excuse me. And that number is area code 518-761-8225. And I announce that now because when we open public hearings later, if you wish to comment, please be prepared to dial that number to make your comments. We do have a couple of administrative items, and as it relates to public hearing, we did have a public hearing scheduled tonight for Frank and Cindy Stysick. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing their last name. They have requested that that application be tabled to October 27th, so pending planning board approval of that tabling motion, if anyone is here or on the phone watching us on the town YouTube channel and intended to comment on that project, I understand there will be some changes and we'll discuss it briefly when it comes up on the agenda shortly, but it's not going to be reviewed extensively this evening. Let's see, and Laura, I understand we have an administrative item regarding Fort Miller.
Correct. So I'll just skip back to the Frank and Cindy's application. They'll have to make a formal tabling resolution, and we can do that later in the meeting.
Okay.
Reference the Fort Miller application, they are requesting a one-year extension due to the COVID issues. They are in the process of wrapping up their final plans at this time, and they just thought it would be safe to request their extension.
Okay. All right, and let's see, we don't have a draft motion for that effect. Are they asking?
Actually, you do. It's in the...
Oh, that was just handed out?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I was going to say, our secretary's all over it.
Yeah, I should have known.
Steve, you want to mention about phones and exits? Phones and exits.
I'm sorry?
I want to mention about the phones and exits.
Oh, right, yes, thank you.
You really brought your A game.
Yeah, I forgot to mention as we started the meeting also that those that are in attendance with us tonight, if you notice the red emergency exit lights, in the event of an emergency, I know we had quite a bad thunderstorm a few hours ago. If there is an emergency of some kind, those are the exits. If you have an electronic device, cell phone or tablet or other device, if you would please shut it off or turn the ringer off so that it does not disturb our meeting, that would be appreciated. Let's see, and I did alert the public about the public hearing, so thank you for that. And we're ready to entertain a resolution on the extension request for Fort Miller.
Motion to approve a one-year extension for site plan PZ 224-2016 and special use permit PZ 224-2016, the Fort Miller Company.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a extension request, motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion regarding the motion?
Can I ask the secretary to include due to COVID?
Sure.
Oh, due to COVID, yeah, okay.
Okay, motion to table site plan PZ 224-2016, special use permit PZ 224-2016, Fort Miller Company, due to COVID.
Okay, we have an amended motion. Do we have a second?
I believe you meant to say extend rather than table. I think you said table.
Let's try it again. We're going to extend it for 1 year.
Thank you. I'll second the motion.
All right, we have an amended motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on the motion? Maria, can you call the vote for us, please?
Mr. Deeb?
Yes.
Ms. White? Yes. Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mr. Traver?
Yes. Okay, next we move to our regular agenda, and the first section is tabled items, and the one and only application that is tabled item tonight is Site Plan 9-2020 for Kathy Sanders. Laura?
Okay, so this applicant did receive their variances the other evening for setback, permeability, their floor area ratio, and it was shoreline setback. They did revise their application materials, so they reduced a bedroom on the second floor, and they reduced green space, they increased their green space. And so the zoning board had approved their variance requested.
So the changes they made in the project do not need to go back to the ZBA?
Correct.
Okay.
And that was done as part of their submission to the ZBA.
Gotcha, okay, thank you for that. Is someone representing Sanders here this evening? Oh, yes, sir. Before we take a comment from applicants, I would ask that due to the, part of our COVID protocol is that when we have applicants speak at the podium, when you're done, there should be some sanitary wipes there. When you're done, if you would wipe off the microphone for us, please. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Good evening and welcome.
Good evening, board. Thank you. My name is Jeff. I'm from Redbud Development and Landscape Architecture, and I am here with Clark Wilkinson from Environmental Design Partnership, representing Kathy Sanders. Kathy couldn't be here tonight. She's quarantining at home right now because she had to travel from a restricted state. But we are here to answer any of your questions. So my goal right now is just to provide you a general outline of what happened since we last were here back in February. And then Clark Wilkinson wants to come up and provide any details and discuss any specifics for you. So in essence, as was already stated, we met with the planning board or the zoning board last week. We got our variances for the sideline and shoreline setbacks, also for the floor area ratio. And we had redesigned the structure itself to reduce and eliminate a height variance that we originally requested. And as part of that design, we also reduced the size of the structure, the second floor of the structure as well, to reduce the floor area ratio as part of the design. And then an existing structure that's part of the site where there's a 3-car garage with a extended lean-to off of the back was also removed as part of the design to help improve the floor area ratio. But I think it's important too that the board understands the history of the property. So in brief, the owner purchased a pre-existing non-conforming lot, fully aware of what she was getting into. It's currently has a rusted metal roof. It had a non-conforming dock that was rebuilt with an approved application. It has currently a buried oil fuel tank, rotted arsenic retaining walls on the property, and about a 50-year-old septic system that is already approved for a new system, so we're going to be bringing all of that up to date. Another component that's interesting with this property is one of the bays of the existing garage is actually used by a gentleman by the name of Richard Phillips. He runs a small, we'll call it a landscaping business out of that garage. There's no financial remuneration between the owner and this Richard Phillips. She just lets him use it because he does a lot of work in that general neighborhood. So it's part of her commitment to the general community for making sure that the history of the space stays the same. People can still continue to make a living there in essence. But she's also committed to this concept of making sure that the neighborhood is improved and the lake is taken care of. So as part of the design of this structure of her house, we were also tackling the entire site design by redoing improving stormwater, reduced a significant amount of asphalt, and again, Clark can speak to some of the specifics on that. Introduce some rain gardens. We have a rain garden. We're under the 5,000 square foot threshold for the disturbance on the lot, and that was a very strategic part of the design. But we've introduced a lot of plant materials along the shoreline, introduced a rain garden that you can see along the shoreline, and we're redirecting all of the surface water that would normally, will potentially be able to get to the shoreline and pitch it back toward that rain garden. And then anything that's potentially coming down that slope is also going to go to that rain garden. So in general, there's, in our opinion, there are a lot of great improvements that are happening with this property. Not only for the structure itself and for the habitat that the owner is going to be able to create for herself and for we'll say grandkids that are going to be coming hopefully soon. But for the general community, you know, in her desire to make sure that this property is part of the lake and part of the community in the sense that it's not going to be a detriment and add to it in a negative way. One of the original comments from the planning board at our last meeting in February was this consideration of the requirements of a shoreline buffer. As part of this neighborhood, there is a generally understood pedestrian path that goes around the lake. We didn't want to impede on that. Instead, we modified and created part of this rain garden and all of the plantings and utilizing the stormwater management, the rain garden plantings as part of this design, so that one, we can maintain that planting buffer or add to the plantings as much as we reasonably could along the shoreline, but at the same time, maintain that pedestrian pathway that leads around the lake. So we didn't necessarily meet the exact requirements of that planting scheme that's necessarily required as a buffer, but our goal with this planting, with the stormwater management and the rain gardens is to mitigate that and break up that threshold a little bit. So if the board doesn't necessarily have any questions for me, I'd like to introduce Clark Wilkinson again from Environmental Design Partnership.
Sure, by all means. Now, we may have questions for you after, but
I'm
might as
not
well
going
finish your
anywhere.
presentation first. Thank you for your help.
Absolutely.
Good evening. As Jeff said, I'm Clark Wilkinson with the Environmental Design Partnership, representing the engineering portion of this project. The things that Jeff touched on are all good. As far as numbers go, the biggest number that you guys would be interested in is the fact that we increased the permeability by approximately 10% from existing, which is one of the reasons why we were able to get the approval from the zoning board for the variances we were asking. The other interesting point is that one of the notes in the staff notes states that the water is from the lake. That is untrue. The water is from the well, the existing well on the property, and always has been. And the two adjoining owners are also from wells, which is one of the reasons why we, back, I believe in February or March, I was in front of the town board as the health department and got the variance for the revised septic system that we are constructing on the site as well. We're going to the mat system on this, and we're enlarging the separation distance not only to the existing well on this property, but we're meeting the 100-foot requirements on the two adjoining wells as well. Wanted to note those improvements as well. So tonight we're here before you to ask for site plan approval on this project. And again, I think overall the project is a vast improvement from the original one you saw. We've increased the green space significantly, and we've added some plantings and things like that. We've added significant plantings around the face of the entrance coming in, as well as enhance some of the stormwater plantings around the lake. So with that in mind, we'll turn it over to the board for questions, comments, and
Questions, comments from members of the board?
I have one, just a difference in what's written in our agenda and the material, and then back to a January 9th letter that we got original material. And it said, in the letter, it said it's going to be a full upgrade to the existing septic system.
yes,
But then the material here says it is a new septic system.
it's
Is
a
that what
brand new
that meant?
septic system to upgrade from the original. The original that's there now is actually a dry well type system, which is relatively inefficient and doesn't treat water as well as the one we're putting in, which is why the town board of health approved that as a variance.
Thank you.
The path around the lake is the lawn down by the water?
That's correct. And that's understood. There's no easements found anywhere, and we don't have a title report to uphold it, but the neighbors that have been living there for 30 years said this is the way it's always been, and we're trying to maintain that and be good neighbors as well.
I know one of the big issues at the last meeting was the height variance, and I appreciate
Correct.
that you were able to find a way to bring the height down, so
Yes.
it didn't require the variance, so thank you.
Thank you.
And I would agree, it's a significant improvement over the plan we saw before.
The public hearing on this project was left open when it was tabled last time, so I will remind the viewing public of the phone number, area code 518-761-8225, if you would like to call in and generate public comment on this application. And in the meantime, Laura, are there any written comments?
I have 2 written comments. I'm not certain if they were read into the record the last time, so let me read them
Okay.
for the first time or again. So this is addressed to the members. We have no objection to the application submitted by Kathy Sanders, 119 Birdsall Road, for renovation and addition. We support her request without a question. This is Kathleen and Wallace Hirsch. The next one is addressed to Craig Brown. I am writing to show my full support for applicant Kathy Sanders of 119 Birdsall Road for renovation of an existing home. She is a respectable and well-liked person looking to spend more time in the North Country. She has fallen in love with the area, and we welcome her and her family with open arms. The upgrades are appropriate and much needed and will be an asset to the neighborhood. And this is from Maureen Valente.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, comments from members of the board? My phone hasn't rung, so I will close the public hearing.
Is the members of the audience that were here for this public hearing?
Yeah, are there folks in the audience that wanted to comment? Yes, sir.
So just that the public hearing is open.
Yeah, the public hearing is open, reopened.
Thank
Yes,
you,
sir.
Board. I'll be brief, as it seems the project is in good opinion from what I'm hearing. My name is John Sembrook. My wife Pam and I live in the property adjacent to Kathy's proposed build. We've been in our property for about 20 years. We were friends with the prior owner, Colleen Beadleston. She lived there into her 90s. We're friends as well with Kathy Sanders and her family as they plan this project. You know, from our point of view, and actually you see our foundation and deck just actually on this drawing. This is an improvement to a septic system, as noted, a brand new septic system that's further from the lake. It's the removal of an oil tank. That's very important to us, noting there's 2 wells that you can actually see on this diagram. Getting rid of that old 50-year-old oil tank, very important to us. And then in terms of permeability, vastly improved, in terms of landscaping, in terms of terracing, in terms of water and runoff negatively impacting the lake. This design mitigates a great deal of those issues from the existing property. So we're fully in support of it, and I think, as was noted by the 2 prior letters and many other letters that we heard read at prior zoning board meetings, fully in support of this. So I'll be brief. Thank you for that. If there's any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else in the audience that wanted to comment on this application? My apologies for forgetting to give you that opportunity before. We actually, in our excellent COVID adventures in our last 7 meetings, we haven't had, quite honestly, a lot of public comment from people actually in attendance. But I'm not seeing any additional audience members that want to comment, so I will, for a second time, close the public hearing on Sanders. And does the board feel comfortable moving forward? Okay, we have a draft motion prepared by staff.
Motion to approve site plan 9-2020, Kathy Sanders, according to the draft resolution prepared by staff, with the following. 1, waivers requested are granted. 2, the approval is valid for 1 year from the date of approval. Applicant is responsible for requesting an extension of approval before the 1-year time frame has expired if the applicant has not yet applied for a building permit or commenced significant site work. 3, adherence to the items outlined in the follow-up letters sent with this resolution, including items A through K.
I'll second it.
We have an approval motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Marie, could you call the vote for us, please?
Ms. White? Yes. Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Hunzinger?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mr. Deeb?
Yes?
Mr. Traver?
Yes. They're all set.
Kathy, do you wanna, you're gonna have to have a bunch of, I don't think you have to change anything on them.
Drawings?
One more drawing.
You're welcome
Thank you
to
for
it.
hanging in there and redoing that. It's really, it's gonna look beautiful.
Recognize
Thank you, Mr. White.
on that mask.
couple more if you want. Yep, thank you.
Good luck.
Next on our agenda, we move into planning board recommendations to the ZBA. And our first application under planning board recommendations is Gary Higley, site plan 30-2020. Laura, can you brief us?
So this application is to construct a 590 square foot addition to an existing home that is 3,026 square feet, including decks with a floor area of 4,189. The proposed floor area is 4,306. The board previously reviewed an addition known as Gary's TV room of 328 square feet previously. That has not yet been constructed, but will be consistent with the garage to be attached. Again, the variance relief is referenced to setbacks and permeability as before.
Okay, thank you. Is Mr. Higley or someone representing him here? Good evening, sir.
I'm just going to write this down if you don't mind. So, good evening, board members. Susan and I are asking to remove an existing garage that right now is 14 feet from the lake with blacktop underneath it. And build a new garage that will be approximately 65 feet from the lake. We will be removing blacktop and improving permeability and stormwater management. We have asked the advice of Nick Rowell, CPESC from Warren County Soil and Water, and he has submitted a plan, which I think you have a copy of.
Yes, we do.
And Susan and I are hoping that you approve this project and for the benefit of the lake. We have a drainage problem on this property, and this is going to really solve the issue.
So replacing the garage with stormwater management.
Yes,
We like that.
thank you. I do too.
How can we say no?
Thank you.
Anything else?
No.
Okay. Questions, comments from members of the board?
I think you already said.
There is no public hearing on this application at this point because this is a recommendation to the ZBA on the variances that they requested, which is for setbacks and permeability. Under SECRA, this is type 2, so we don't need to do a SECRA review. Fairly straightforward. Does anyone on the planning board have questions or comments for the applicant?
Oh, this was a nice 4th of July site visit in a kayak, so it worked out really well.
Yeah? That's a good way to do it.
Was it a discussion or did we get something else? But Gary, it turned out nice.
It did, yes, thank you.
I think it'd be a great improvement. And,
Yeah. I mean, we have an issue where water runs down J Road, just because of the slope of the road, and it comes down our driveway and ends up in the lake. And it has for 50 years or more, probably. And this is going to solve that issue.
so what you're saying is your beach is large enough and you don't want it to get any larger?
That's exactly right.
We appreciate you being good stewards of the lake.
Thank you.
So it sounds as though we're going to make a clean referral to the ZBA. If you have your draft resolution ready, you can proceed.
Motion to make a recommendation on behalf of the planning board to the zoning board of appeals for area variance number 23-2020, Gary Higley in solution. The planning board, based on limited review, has not identified any significant adverse impacts that cannot be mitigated with the current project proposal.
I'll second it.
We have a referral resolution made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Marie, can you call the vote for us, please?
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Hunzinger?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes?
Mr. Deeb?
Yes.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Mr. Traver?
Yes. You're off to the ZBA.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, board members. Thank you.
So welcome.
Next on our agenda, we move into old business. The first application being Brian Hayward, site plan 19-2020. This application is subject to public hearing. Laura?
So this application was for a demo and a new build, construction of a 1,536 square foot new home. The floor area was 3,072, and as noted previously that the garage is part of this part of the building itself. It's not separate. The zoning board did grant the variance request. It was relief for setbacks as well as for floor area.
Okay, thank you. Good evening.
Evening, Tom Center with Hutchins Engineering. As Laura stated, we received our variances the other evening. A little different than what you had at recommendation is we increased the south side setback based on some comments here from 2.9 feet to 5 feet off the south property line. So we were able to slide it a little bit further to the north. We didn't want to split the difference because of the issue with the neighboring septic system on the property to the north. We'll be doing a little bit of a revision on the stormwater management in lieu of some of the comments from the town engineer in order to address some of his issues for the 25-year storm and the separation distances from the well by treating the house roof into infiltration trenches with infiltrators and allowing the driveway to infiltrate into the lawn area and go down that we still get below the 25-year design storm for flow and rate because the soils are very good there. So we don't have a device per se that's within 50 feet of any well. Everything else is pretty much the same as you saw before. I think the biggest thing is the moving of the house a little bit further off that property line. It's a pretty straightforward project. We have good sandy soils. We have the septic variance, or with the well variance for the well separation from the neighboring septic systems with treatment on the water at the residence. So we'll leave it for any other questions that you folks may have.
Okay, questions, comments from members of the planning board?
Tom, what's the new setback?
Excuse me?
The new setback from...
5 feet off of the south property.
And so you're pushing the whole house?
Whole house to the north, 5 feet, yes.
Interesting.
That's good.
There is a public hearing on this application at this phase, and I will remind the public once again, if you would like to comment on Brian Hayward, site plan 19-2020, call the number I previously gave you, which is area code 518-761-8225. And I'll ask Laura, are there any written comments?
There are written comments. It's actually a phone conversation I had with a neighbor on 8/18 of 2020. Staff Laura Moore received a phone call from Kim Ott at 7 Palmer Drive. She explained that she and Harry Ott approved the Brian Hayward project as proposed. Note the neighbor is the one to the south of the project site.
Okay, thank you. My phone isn't ringing. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to address the board on this application? This is Brian Hayward. Not seeing any hands. We'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Does the board feel prepared to move forward?
Yes.
Okay, we have a draft motion.
Motion to approve site plan 19-2020, Brian Hay. Granted. Two, the approval is valid for 1 year from the date of approval. Applicant or staff is requesting an extension of approval before the 1 year time frame has expired if the applicant has not yet applied for a building permit or commenced significant site work. Three, adherence to the items outlined in the follow-up letter sent with this resolution, including items A through K.
I'll second it.
We have approval motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the application or the motion? Maria, can you call the vote for us, please?
Mr. Hunsaker?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mr. Deeb?
Yes.
Ms. White? Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Traver?
Yes. You're all set.
Thank you.
Tom, you want any of these?
We're all set.
Got to redo them
Do
all.
them anyway, right?
Changes
You can't use
to
them.
the setback.
Good luck, Brian.
Next, under old business, we have Frank and Cindy Stisek. I understand that they've requested a tabling, Laura?
That is correct. They were tabled at the Zoning Board of Appeals. They had discussed coming back to this board to discuss an alternative project, but since then, they've requested to be tabled, similar to what they've done with the zoning board. So,
Okay.
All right.
So they have requested to be tabled until October 27th?
I thought we had Emerson Trust next.
we do.
You're looking at the, not the.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of ourselves. My mistake, I'm sorry. So we'll come to that one in a few minutes. The next application is actually Benjamin Aronson Trust. This is also under old business. Subdivision preliminary stage 9-2020 and subdivision final stage 10-2020. Laura?
So this is a two-lot subdivision of a 10.32 acre parcel. Lot 1 is 6.10, Lot 2 is 4.22. The relief requested was granted in reference to lot frontage where 100 feet is proposed and 200 feet was required, and the zoning board granted that relief.
Okay, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Michael Muller, and I'm representing the Benjamin Aronson Trust. The subdivision has a 10-acre, 10.2-acre parcel that we'd like to have a northerly parcel shown on your map as lot number 1, retaining the residence, all of those amenities, and it would be on 6 acres. The southerly lot is on your map is lot 2, and that would retain the existing garage, and it would be approximately slightly larger than 4 acres. This is actually drawing a line as required by your code and your review, but you'll find that there's no new construction, no building permit is anticipated, there'll be no excavating, there'll be no change in the lighting, no change in planting, no new stormwater, no new driveway, and it meets all the setbacks. This was built in 2017, and it built in accordance with a prior site plan review. So it's just going to all stay the same, but I do need a line.
Okay, thank you. Questions, comments from members of the board?
This
Fairly.
is a question with, trying to read through the minutes and it wasn't here before, but to what is the garage accessory?
Doesn't have to be an accessory. Your definition, and Mr. Brown, I provided a letter to you that in the Adirondack Park, any structure that is in that zone and greater than 1,250 square feet constitutes a principal building.
It's a beautiful garage.
It is.
Yeah. We do have a public hearing on this application as well, and I will again remind the audience viewing us on the town website that if you wish to comment on this application, Benjamin Aronson Trust, please call area code 518-761-8225 and ask Laura, are there any written comments?
There are no written comments.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments from members of the board? Nope. Okay, we have a draft motion, I believe.
Secret.
Yes, you have to do seeker.
We have the secret.
Correct.
And you need to post.
Oh, we have to do the seeker resolution, okay.
And you have to close the public hearing? Or- Maria, I'm sorry, is that what you asked us to do?
Yep, okay. So under secra, this is an unlisted action.
So I believe you need to close your public hearing first if there's been no comment.
Okay, close the public hearing. Public hearing is closed, and this is one of those somewhat odd cases for secra where we're creating a subdivision, and yet it does require a secra review. Does anyone have any concerns about environmental impacts by creating this subdivision? Okay. Nope. We have a draft resolution, I believe.
Motion to grant negative declaration for subdivision final stage 10-2020 Benjamin Aronson Trust as per the resolution prepared by staff. Part 2 of the EAF has been reviewed and completed by the planning board.
Second.
We have a secret motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion, any further discussion regarding secret? Maria, can you call the vote for us, please?
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mr. Deeb?
Yes.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Hunzinger?
Yes.
Mr. Traver?
Yes. And so now we can move on to the subdivision.
Preliminary stage, okay. Motion to approve subdivision preliminary stage 9-2020 Benjamin Harrison Trust.
Second it.
We have a preliminary stage motion made and seconded. Is there any discussion on preliminary stage? Maria, can you call the vote for us, please?
Mr. Valentine?
Yes?
Mr. Deeb?
Yes.
Ms. White?
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Traver?
Yes. And we can move on to final stage.
Motion to approve subdivision final stage 10-2020 Benjamin Harrison Trust. One, the requirements state Environmental Quality Review Act have been considered and the planning board has adopted a secret negative declaration. 2, waiver requests are granted. 3, the approval is valid for 1 year from the date of approval. The applicant is responsible for requesting an extension of approval before the 1-year time frame has expired if the applicant has not yet applied for a building permit or commenced significant site work. 4, adherence to the items in the follow-up letter with this resolution, including items 4 through 11.
Second.
We have a final stage subdivision motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on final stage? Maria, can you call the vote for us, please?
Mr. Deeb?
Yes.
Ms. White? Yes. Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mr. Traver?
Yes. You're all set.
Thank you.
Mike, you want any copies of these to submit?
do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we'll go to the table.
Yeah, we'll try this again. So next we have Frank and Cindy Stezek, site plan 32-2020 and freshwater wetlands permit 2-2020. As Laura informed us earlier, they were tabled at the Zoning Board of Appeals and have asked us for some additional time to come back with an updated plan. And they are requesting a tabling up to October 27th. This application does have a public hearing, and because we're tabling it, we will open the public hearing, and we will leave it open until the applicant returns, hopefully in October. Do you have anything to add, Laura?
The board was concerned with the same concerns that the planning board had in reference to putting 2 dwellings on an individual lot.
Okay.
Sorry, I missed that, Laura.
So the zoning board had the same concerns that the planning board had in reference to placing 2 dwellings on 1 lot.
Gotcha.
Motion to table site plan 32-2020 and freshwater wetlands permit 2-2020 Frank and Cindy Stasiak to the October 27, 2020 planning board meeting with information due by September 15, 2020.
We have a tabling motion made. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Maria, can we have the vote, please?
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mr. Deeb?
Yes.
Ms. White? Mr. Traver?
Yes. All right, next we move into new business. The first application being Camp Knox LLC Ballast Site Plan Modification 29/2020. Laura?
Okay, so this applicant has made revisions to an existing landscaping plan. A portion of the area to be replaced has been started, includes approximately 100 square foot permeable patio area with a 150 square foot permeable patio area that's the replacement. And also, the landscaping plan is being updated at the shoreline and described that the applicant has tried to utilize the plantings that were in the original planting plan and has indicated that they have died. And so the applicant's proposing a lawn area and to maintain the buffers that are identified on the plan.
Okay, thank you. It should be noted, too, that after some discussion prior to our meeting, it was deemed that this technically is unapproved development as well, since some development had started. Is there someone here representing Camp Knox? Yes, sir.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, planning board members. Thank you for hearing our case today. This is my wife, Cara Ballas. My name's Steve
Hi.
Ballas. I just wanted to go over a brief outline of how we arrived at the approvals that we're seeking. We're the owners of 67 Knox Road. Some of you may or may not know that address. Prior to us purchasing it, we did learn it had quite the history with the neighborhood and the neighbors. So coming in to do the project, we really wanted to gauge the neighbors, get all their concerns, and ultimately really deliver, a good project for our family and a good project for the neighborhood. And, we feel we did a good job with that up front. And in fact, we do have 2 letters of support for the landscaping changes that we're proposing. So we completed the house in November of 2018. And at that time, we did inherit a landscape plan, which we did follow, and we got the CO in November of 2018. As you can imagine, we finished the project up in the winter, and most, landscaping was the final piece, so a lot of the plants did go in the winter. That first winter, a fair amount did not survive. It's been through 2 winters now, and we also quickly learned there's a pretty significant deer population at Assembly Point, which had their way with a lot of stuff too. So we thought this would be a great time to kind of alter the landscaping plan to meet our family's needs. The existing didn't really plan for existing conditions. So we're ultimately seeking the support and approval from the board for 3 items with the landscaping. Number 1 is adding a patio to the lower level. I apologize about my illustrative skills on the site plan here, but I tried to do my best. On the lower northern side, we had an existing rock patio that was there. So what we're looking to do here is simply add a permeable patio over the existing rocks that we had. We still are above the 75% permeability. We're a little over 76% with the lot. Number 2, on the, this is actually the southern side, lower southern side. We did have plantings there, and as I mentioned, a lot of those plantings did not survive. So we're looking to add a grass area there, larger grass area. We have 2 young kids. As you come down from the house, that area is actually a little more flat down there, so it's a good area for the kids to play, kind of community engagement, and we're looking to improve it in that way. And then lastly, we want to add a number of native species plants to that lower berm and also all around the patio to kind of beef up those buffers there. So this house, being newer, it got all new infrastructure. I know a primary concern is runoff into the lake. We're members of a Lake George Association as well, so we take those concerns as well. So the house has a brand new septic system, which is actually in front of the house. We have an 85-foot setback as it is to the rear of the house, and then the septic system is 100+ feet from the lake. We got a 2-pump system that goes up to the front. We also got the whole stormwater management system. We have 2 dry wells in place. The entire gutter system on the house goes into those dry wells. So I can attest we really have no runoff from the house that gets onto the surface. If you look at the plan, we have 3 9 to 10-foot buffer areas as you come down from the 85-foot setback. We're heavily planted on those first 2. We actually moved some of the plants that survived into those berms, and then we want to heavily plant the lower berms as well as you get closer to the lake. So in conclusion, it's those 3, the addition of the patio over the stone, increasing the grass area to the lake, and then adding more plantings on the buffers that are closest to the lake. As I mentioned, we do have a couple letters of support from neighbors, and we're ultimately seeking your approval here as well today. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Questions, comments from members of the board? As mentioned, there is a public hearing on this application, Camp Knox Ballas, site plan modification 29-2020. And I'll ask the public if you would like to comment by phone. The number to call is area code 518-761-8225. And we'll open that public hearing. And Laura, there were some written comments referenced?
There is. So I'll start one. This is addressed to the Queensbury Planning Board and other government entities. I'm writing to provide comments as a next-door neighbor regarding the Lake George waterfront landscaping changes that are underway at 67 Knox Road, Camp Knox. I want to fully support the comments, suggestions, and directions of Lake George Waterkeeper regarding the lakefront development regulations and goals. These goals work to protect the lake and all the properties along its shore. Our little bay on the west side of Assembly Point has had problems in the past with algae and unacceptable bacteria levels, which affect the family friendliness of the lake water for all in the area. Septic and rainwater runoff are the main causes. 10 years ago, this lot was fully treed, and now, after 3 different owners/developers removing trees, this has become an open scar with only trees remaining on the margins. Trees are a most valuable device for capturing rainwater in the canopy and infiltrating the water with their bark and root system. This is vastly preferable than large grass areas. Trees also provide for better sound absorption for the legions of weekly renters that use this property all summer long. Excuse me. The proposal as shown in the application on the town's website shows 3 trees in the landscape revision. One picture which are now missing, and the plans provided do not show replacements or expansion. Where the required 1 tree in every 20 feet of shoreline, there would be at least 5 trees stretched out along the shoreline. Especially considering the illegal clear cutting that has occurred over the years on this site, this number of trees should actually be far greater. I do not believe illegal actions go away whenever property changes hands, but rather stay with property just like an oil spill or a tank leak would. So the town should require more trees. Again, I would like to say that the waterkeeper speaks for the lake and for me, and this is Bob Glandon, 63 Knox Road. This is addressed to Mr. Traver and the Planning Board. As an owner of property at 103 Knox Road, I am aware of an application before your board for further improvements at 67 Knox Road. I am in support of these improvements of an additional patio area. Under the Ballas ownership, this previously troubled property has received the care and maintenance to make it an asset to the neighborhood. This is Dennis McElroy at 103 Knox Road.
Okay, thank you.
And then this is addressed to the Planning and Zoning Department. My name is Stuart Rosenberg, and I reside at 73 Knox Road, and I'm direct abutter to 67 Knox Road. I'm writing to let you know I support the revised landscaping hardscape being proposed by Kara and Stephen Ballas. This is Stuart Rosenberg at 73 Knox Road. And I'm just going to ask Chris if he wants to read his own letter, or do you want me to read it in? Okay. So Chris Novitsky has a Lake George Waterkeeper letter.
Okay.
Want to have them come up to the podium and clean that off?
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and, you want to make public comment, sir? Oh, Chris, I didn't even see you there.
Mr. Chairman, while we're waiting, you had mentioned, you used the term unapproved development, so is part of this already in place?
So part of the patio has been, part of the patio and has been started. Some of the landscape has already been not replanted.
And that wasn't part of the other approved site plan?
So the approved site plan had a smaller area with river rock. The applicant's replacing that with a permeable patio area.
Good, thank you.
Thus the reason for the application for modification. But it is somewhat after the fact.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Chris Novitsky, Lake George Waterkeeper. As been mentioned, I'm sure the board is aware of this property and the long history that you've had with reviews due to non-compliant actions by previous owners with unpermitted disturbance, stormwater management non-compliance, building code issues. Upon review of the submitted material, it was shocking to see how the shoreline buffer has disappeared despite the conditions placed by this board to protect it. Development of this property has done little for the protection of Lake George and resulted in significant impacts from excessive vegetation removal, excavation, soil removal, and stormwater runoff. It's recognized these actions have not been performed by the current applicant, but in my opinion, it's time for the previous conditions implemented to mitigate negative impacts of development be enforced, require restoration, and prevent any further development on the property. The original planning board condition has not been adhered with and has resulted in impacts to the natural resources of the town. The final approval by the planning board in May of 2011, as well as the modified plan January 2014, contained the condition the limits of clearing will constitute a no-cut buffer zone. Orange construction fence shall be installed around these areas and field verified. It's evident from the clearing that the no-cut buffer continued through the permitting and afterward, and the condition was not complied with, as demonstrated by the photos that we had from 2007 and 2009, which were attached to this letter. The board should require the shoreline buffer to be restored as close to undisturbed conditions as possible to replace the existing lawn to the lake condition with mature vegetation, balancing the potential construction impacts. You don't want to excavate right on the shoreline because that can cause as much problems, but find that balance. The planning board should not approve any additional hardscape within the shoreline buffer zone, and restoration of the entire shoreline buffer should be done to the greatest extent practicable. The applicant is proposing a restored buffer falling well short of the town requirements, including a majority of that 35 feet to be grass or permeable patio. The town should require a completely restored buffer with diversity planning to be, in quote from the town code, harmony with the purpose and intent of the code, and to mitigate, again, quote from the code, undue adverse impacts to the resources of the town, as required by 179-980. And also the planning board should require the stormwater management plan to be certified and an inspection submitted. So we recommend that the planning board deny the application for failure to adhere to prior conditions and require a restoration of the shoreline buffer as per the town code. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other written comment?
There is no other written comment.
Thank you. You can come up to the mic if you would, please. I'm sorry, say that again?
I think you have no comments from the public.
Okay, are there others that wish to comment? Members of the public? Yes, sir.
My name is Don Collins. I live at 35 Knox Road. I would point you to the assessment records for this property. It shows 4 bedrooms. Septic system was designed for 4 bedrooms. Yet, if you go to the Davies & Davies marketing material for the rental of this property, they advertise this as a 5-bedroom property with a maximum of 12 people. We see the groups that come in to rent this property. Oh, did I mention the rental rate is $14,400 a week? So they typically get a couple of families going in to rent the property. And they're using a system that's designed for 4 bedrooms, yet I won't say in every week's instance, but in a number of instances, they have their full house, or 12 people. So when I look at the landscape design here, it's skimpy, especially in light of all the clear cutting that occurred on this property. So now you take the pressure from the septic system, which is back behind the house, combined with the weak plantings, and you're putting more stress on the lake. And I know Bob Glandon has mentioned about the fact that there is algae growth in that area, and there is bacteria in that area on occasion. So it is my request that the board reject this plan and work to get a more robust plan that takes more trees into account so that visually from the lake, you have a filtered view, which was the goal of the town in approving development along the shoreline, so it looks less like Cloverdale and Rockhurst and more like the area of Assembly Point. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that wanted to comment? I think I see a hand there. Yes, yes, ma'am. Sorry, I didn't see you. You're right behind the podium for me, so I just saw your hand come up.
That's okay, thank you. Sorry.
I was going to say,
I'll
you
just
can
hold
take
it.
that right out.
I'm a bit short, so anyway, as you know, as the waterkeeper said,
Ma'am, could you state your name for the record?
yes, Lorraine Ruffing, Assembly Point. 67 Knox Road has a long history of violations to environmental regulations and building permits. The property was virtually clear-cut in 2006, as the attached pictures show. This is what it used to look like, with lots of healthy old-growth trees, which were removed within 35 feet of the lake. There was no revegetation as required by town code, which says where shoreline lot owners violate shoreline cutting restrictions, the zoning administrator shall require the total revegetation so as to create a buffer strip. 2, the existing landscaping, particularly the pitch of the driveway at the back of the house, creates excessive stormwater runoff violating Code 147 on stormwater management. 3, the question is, how did this property ever qualify for a site plan approval? Because the project shall not have an undue adverse impact upon natural, scenic, aesthetic, or ecological resources of the town. And that's, again, according to Code 179. 4th, the builders violated their own building plans requiring the town to demand the removal of part of the structure. And 5, now the current owners are requesting to extend a patio within 50 feet of the lake, violating Code 179, which states that no fill or hard surfacing within 50 feet of the lake except by the site approval, the site plan approval. Given the number of flagrant violations of town codes that have occurred on this property, I respectfully request that this new proposal for additional hardscaping be rejected and instead the owners be required to install the required 35 feet buffer strip. And this is a sketch by the waterkeeper about what it should look like and not what we see on the screen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next person. I will leave everything to the secretary.
You'll actually, if you have a minute to take the wipe and
Yep.
write down those items.
Laura, while she's doing that, I would ask, do we have that information from the waterkeeper, the proposed?
I don't have the proposed buffer.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else that wanted to address the planning board? Yes, ma'am.
Good evening.
Evening.
My name is Dr.
Can you put the mic back in?
Good call.
It's hard to see anything in these masks.
You know, I'm sort of like got this blur thing going right here. Good evening. Thank you for listening to all of us tonight. My name is Dr. Carol Collins. I am a neighbor on 35 Knox Road. You heard earlier from my husband, John. My expertise is in water quality. I have a PhD and been working with the town, of course, over several years now to get everyone on board in protecting our water quality in our water resources. And I think the town's doing a great job. These unapproved developments are really a tragedy in terms of what's going on for the town and for the lake. And I concur with everyone here tonight that this plan, it's just haphazard even in the way it was presented. But we have spent a great deal of time getting people to recognize the importance of trees, restoring these natural buffers. And this just flies in the face of everything we're doing. This represents to me a case of what not to do to Lake George. And I don't want that to represent the town of Queensbury, who is the leader in Lake George, to reflect that upon them. So I feel that putting any further hardscape in that area is wrong. And I can cite scientific information, but frankly, I believe you know that. I do believe that given the formula that we should be putting in for 5 to 6 trees along that shoreline, plus additional on the upslope, on the up the hill. If you look at the site where it was, and I have some additional pictures, which, is it okay if I approach the board, the table?
Share
or
with me, and then I'll pass it along.
Okay. I should have sprayed them, I don't know.
I understand.
That's sorry, Laura. Thank you.
Could you, I see that you handed the pictures to Laura, who will distribute them. Can you explain what they are pictures of?
Okay, so they're pictures of what the original site was like, and it was as treed and beautiful as you can imagine. There was, and when you were given 30% removal, you know, that 30% removal was done, and then it seems like 30% more was done with the next, and now we're down to a barren landscape.
So that's prior to the applicants owning the property?
No, the applicant actually took down additional trees. It was witnessed by the neighbors taking it down. So in addition to what you see, there was additional trees taken down. Okay. And so now it's barren. And what we need to do is to reestablish a shoreline. I mean, in a way, I'm glad this came up because this, you know, whatever was happening, I mean, this place is denuded. This is not what we want for Lake George. And what we need is a canopy of mixed species. We've been working a lot, the town board members and others, on trying to figure out what to do to protect the lake. And everyone says we need a mixture of deciduous plants. We need to put those oak trees back. We need to put the maple trees back. We need to put the evergreen back. And if you prescribe the 5 or 6 trees that should be across that frontage, that would be a start. It has to be mixed. It's very important given the changes we are seeing in our environment. We need to have another canopy. Below that canopy, we need to have a shrub component. We need less lilies. We don't need 20 lilies or whatever these things were. We need real woody stemmed plants. What happens is when that canopy intercepts the rainwaters, it then channels it down along the bark. Believe it or not, bark captures 60% of the nutrients and runoff that we really want to capture. I really didn't even know that until quite recently when we've been working on some LID regulations. But it's so critical. And then what happens is those roots are like arteries, and they bring that down into the depths of the soil. That's what we're looking to do. So we want our trees back. And I think everyone along Knox Road really would like to see make that change. And not only for this site, but for other sites as well. I mean, there's a lot more I can say, but I think everyone knows it in their heart, intrinsically, that we need to restore these baselines. We don't need more hardscape. We don't want family-friendly. We want lake-friendly. Family-friendly comes with a healthy ecosystem.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do you want these photographs back, or can we keep them as part of the record?
You can keep them.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Is there anyone else in the audience that wanted to address the planning board on this application? Okay, when she's done, the applicant will return.
Sorry.
I think you mentioned, as part of your opening remarks, that the property, I think, as you said, I think, has quite a history.
It did.
And I feel like we're being penalized, honestly, for being the third builders and third owners on it. And I totally understand the neighbors' concerns, and especially with the previous builders, I just feel like, you know, you get a letter in the mail, and we're taking on a lot of the heat and a lot of those feelings that have been building.
I ask you to address the board and not the audience.
Yeah, so it's unfortunate that we're the recipients of this. As I mentioned, we purchased the house in May of 2018, and we followed every plan to a T. Otherwise, we never would have gotten our certificate of occupancy.
When you purchased the house in 2018, you implemented the most recent approval for the landscaping?
Correct. We inherited a landscaping plan. So the house, when the house was purchased, it was a shell. It had, you know, the siding was on it, the structure was up. They had just, the previous owner had to take the house down 10 feet. And this stuff had nothing to do with us. We didn't clear anything from the lot. There was two kind of dead trees along, not down in the lake, but along the buffer line. And that was it. We did no clearing. And in fact, it's unfortunate because we haven't, you know, we completed the project, got the CO. We didn't hear from any neighbors for 2 years until we just wanted to alter this a little bit. So now we're hearing this. So.
Well, I'm sure there will be, other board members will have comments to add, but I would say initially a couple of things. Listening to you and looking at your application and hearing public comment from the people that live in that part of the lake, that I think a handwritten drawing is probably not going to be adequate for a landscape plan for this area. I think it seems like it's timely that you're interested in developing that buffer. But I do think that, and this board has spent a lot of time learning and training on and understanding the environmental impacts of buffering. It's one of the major initiatives that we've been trying to do in the town to protect the lake. So I think we're going to see, and again, I'm only speaking for myself at this point, we'll have other comment, but I suspect that we're probably going to want to see a more detailed and more comprehensive plan that better matches the requirements, the code requirements for buffering for the town. But I'll open it up for questions, comments from members of the board.
Do you offer the house out for rentals?
We do. Unfortunately, we do. I do not want to rent it at all. I'm originally from the area. My parents still live here. I grew up here my entire life, graduated from Queensbury High School. We live in Boston now. I have known Steve for 10 years. He fell in love with Lake George with me, knowing me, bringing him up here. And it's been a dream for my entire family to own something on the lake, and we've been lucky enough to be able to find this project and be able to have the means to do that. Unfortunately, right now, we don't have the means to live there all the time or not rent it out. The goal is soon, in the next couple of years, we're going to be moving into that property full time. So I will be your neighbors forever, hopefully soon. And right now we do rent it out, but it kills me every time there's renters in there. It's a very personal house for me and a very personal lake for very many reasons.
Question on the septic. I understand it's designed for a 4-bedroom facility?
Yes, I believe that's the plan.
Okay. I see it's advertised as a 5-bedroom. You know what, is that an error, or is it for rent as a 5-bedroom?
Yeah, I'll have to check with Davies on that, but there is, as part of the house, there is an extra sleeping area in the house, which, well, not sleeping area, but room that people stay if they have overflow or whatnot.
Okay.
The, your purchase was in 2018, but the people had stated that tree removal and stuff had taken place in 2006.
Yeah, all the
Yeah.
trees, it's clear, we bought it clear cut, we provided you guys all with the photos of how it looked when we purchased it. How it looks now, the lake view, that's exactly how we
Yeah,
purchased
there's a
it.
photo in there of the grass, so that's how it looked when we purchased it. It was a clear lot. The house was there, but the backyard had already been cleared.
Looking, and Laura had asked you if I'm looking on our agenda, on the cross references, there's 2007, 2007, 2007, 2009, 2014, 2014. There wouldn't have been anything caught anywhere to sit there to say that in any of those other applications that somebody would have noted that there was tree removal or not sticking to a...
Well, you're speaking to the issue of unapproved development, which is something that we're increasingly concerned with,
That's
obviously.
my question, is why from 2006 all the way through with all those different appearances and permits or whatever, that it wasn't caught, that there was...
Well, one of the issues that we face in the town is enforcement. It's very difficult, and Laura can attest to this. You know, her department has finite resources, as all towns do, and enforcement, unfortunately, is one of the areas where that is felt.
I can interject and say in May of 2018, I did talk to our code compliance officer today about this project, and in May of 2018, when the landscaping was installed, it was a compliant site. Everything was installed per compliance of the site.
As of 2018?
Yes.
Yeah, we got our CO in November 2018, and I mean, if we did anything we weren't supposed to, we never would have gotten our CO. I mean, we inherited this landscaping plan, and we followed it to a T, and that's why we got our CO. That's why I'm a little confused at the comments, because I thought those comments should have been directed years ago to
Right.
the other
And they
developers.
probably were.
And no trees have been taken down by us.
Yeah.
So that view that you guys are seeing in those photos, that's how we purchased the property, and that's how it
I
still
think,
looks.
so what they're pointing out is in the landscape plan that's in front of us, there's a few maple trees that were probably part of the original planting plan that are no longer, that you've identified as a grass area. So there was at one point some trees planted in it, and my guess is, or I'm assuming.
There was one small tree there which did not make it.
So
that
that-
tree.
I think
But
that's one of
if
the
someone wants to replant it, I mean, there's no
Someone else
issue,
has
there's no
the
issue
fear
there.
from eating anything, we're all ears.
So, I mean, and we apologize about doing this. So we had the river stone there, which essentially was a patio. It was
that was
a square river stone, and we always intended just to throw permeable patio block on top of it, which we did. And, you know, I think anywhere else, you know, landscaping to us, we always thought, you know, as long as if you're not doing anything drastic or big, you know, you can kind of do it. But I understand now, being within 50 feet of the lake, there's a lot more restrictions. So,
Right.
I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, all we did was put patio block on top of Riverstone that existed, and we're looking to expand the grass area and add more plantings to the new berms and the buffers. And that's really all we're doing here. So we're kind of shocked to learn that all this pass would come out at us when, honestly, we came in and really
Well, I
thought we
think-
did a good job. We have a couple neighbor support letters, and
I think the thought is that since you are interested in updating the landscaping in the shoreline area, let's put some thought into it and try to make it a compliant area.
But let me go back. Laura said it was compliant. So what's the difference between what was compliant in 2018 and today?
So if you look at this plan that's on here, let me see if I can blow it up a little bit further. You notice under the word grass, there's some other symbols that represent plantings that were planted in May, in that, I apologize, I don't know if it was May, but in 2018, that should have remained. The applicant is saying that those plants did not make it.
Right, died
Therefore,
or
therefore he's.
Not all of them. We moved a lot of them to the existing berms. So we moved the ones around in the grass area. And we want to add more with the ones that didn't make it.
So in effect, you're coming back at this point with a modification.
Modification to an approved. It was already, it is approved, it was conforming. We got our
So
CO.
are there things that are missing right now on your site that should be there in the ground that are on an approved plan?
The one is the tree. I don't know, I think it was like a maple tree, but when it got planted, it was, this big. It's gonna, I guess the means
So
is
a
the.
2-inch caliper?
This is what was approved, we have them all.
Yes.
This was what was approved in the plan. If you look real close, you'll see two little trees in there too, and then this was before the smaller plantings went in.
Correct, no, all the plantings are in that photo. You just can't, they went in November, yeah. So they went in the winter, so a lot of them didn't have any buds or leaves. That's why a lot of them didn't make, because we were seeking to get our CO. So, and the landscaping's usually the last to get done when you finish off a house. So some didn't make it through that winter. It's been through 2 winters with, some deer. And so what we did was, what survived in that area, we moved to the existing berms. And that's why we figured, we want to create, we have two young girls.
The upper berm.
Correct. So the upper berm, there's 2 berms. They're like 9 to 10 foot berms as you go up to the house. Yeah.
All right, so my question, a couple things. I remember what we went through with this house and all I remember the roof, it was way out of hand, and the clear cutting, it was a nightmare, and I'm sorry you took it over, but I'm happy you did. But the damage was done before you owned it, and the reason I'm adamant on restoring what was here for the original plan and going back. I thank you for completing the project, but unfortunately, in hindsight of pushing it to get your CO and late in the season, it was kind of not a wise choice, and they didn't make it, and I'm sorry, but with all the destruction that was done to this property ahead of time, not for you, and I don't have a problem with a couple dead trees, and that does happen when you have the disturbance in the foundations that probably got close to the roots, and those trees were, were probably going to go anyways, and what you had to do. But the quality of our lake here, and I'm sure you've probably seen Dr. Collins in her kayak, sampling all the time, but I know she's up and down, and for the lake and how far we've come, I really, I'm looking at the picture where your permeable pavers are now. That looks like wood chips. Is that wood chips around your stone?
It is wood chips, which we want to plant all around it.
All right, now, do you know when the wood chips and that, one of the biggest contributors of pollutants of nitrogen are the decaying matter that's up in the mountains in our natural forests. I mean, that's also a contributor. So, one of the reasons why we don't like the wood chips in the heavy mulches is because that nitrogen, that all breaks down and goes into the lake. And, and that's why the wood chips weren't in there, but the river rock was. Also, too, in the winter.
There was wood chips around the river rock. So those wood chips were all approved with this plan. So,
were they?
So we had a square river rock, just like, we literally just put patio block over the river rock.
Was just in the square.
Just the square. So all we did was put patio block over the river rock. That's it.
Yeah, see, I didn't know about the wood chips.
Yeah, so the wood chips got approved, because that was part of the original. So all that area was wood
chip. That in our buffer zone?
Well, it would be subject to review if it's within the buffer. I mean, the code says no, but if it's, an application is made, we can look at it.
But,
Mr. Chairman,
But the other thing with grass and that, and you get, in the wintertime, what you'll have is the ground will freeze, all right? And once the ground freezes and we have our warm, rainy spells, that water sheets and runs. And by having the plants in other areas to divert, you know, hopefully it can get absorbed here and there as it goes in. So, you know, it's just, there's a whole combination of this whole thing. And I want to thank you for taking over the project because it really turned out to look like a beautiful home. With all that we went through to get it that way. And I understand you not understanding really what you did, but for myself, I feel I'd like it restored to the original approved plan. Okay.
So if I may, let me, if I could poll the board, we have a plan, a handwritten plan submitted by the applicant. Is this sufficient, or do we need to see a re-examination of the plan and perhaps some more information?
Mr. Chairman, your first point was our having to react to a hand-drawn sketch, which I think the quality of Lake George water is too important to do that. The idea of having a professional landscaping firm or whatever take a look at this and do it right, it seems to me the only approach that makes sense.
Okay, now how do other board members feel?
The only question I have with that would have suggested the same thing, and I think that was valid to start off with. To have that plan, but what do we have on that plan? Does that plan that's going to be resubmitted as a modified plan reflect what was an approved plan in 2018 with what modification that the owners are proposing? Is that all we're looking for?
Well, that's what we're discussing. I'm not sure that that's all that I'm looking for. I think if we're going to, if the applicant is talking about making revisions to the buffer area, I don't know that we necessarily need to go back merely to the last approval. I think we should take a fresh look at it.
Do we even know what the last plan consisted of?
This is the plan that's up.
That's it, yeah, we just overlaid that plan.
So remove the word grass.
I'm sorry, but that's,
But we,
I can't
yeah,
make sense of
yeah, I really can't read that, so I don't.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I know, it's hard to read.
May I ask you?
I mean, even if I could read the letters, I don't know what they represent
Yeah, so-
without the codes, you know, without the keys.
What I'm hearing from the board, if I can summarize where I think we're at, and you can correct me where I'm wrong.
I'd like to ask one question.
Go ahead.
Would you be amenable to planting more trees?
Yeah, we would discuss it. I mean, I think based on what we're hearing today, it sounds like most people want that buffer back, which is, you know, fine with us. But to us, I mean, maybe, and I don't know if you can give us feedback on this, perhaps we just seek approval on the patio, which was stone anyway, and if we restore back, you know, the area with the mulch and the plantings to the way this was approved, and maybe we're just seeking approval on just putting the patio block down. I don't know if you can give feedback on that, or because, like I said, this was compliant, this was approved, and if there's, you know, a lot of pushback or, you know, from people, we don't mind restoring it back. I guess the one thing we'd like to keep is the patio over the river stone, which was a hard surface anyway.
And it looks like from this diagram, if we were talking about the patio for a moment, the patio is 11 feet back from the lake?
I don't have the exact measurements on that, but it's probably around 12 or so feet, 12, 15 feet from the lake.
Okay.
So I think we need more specificity on this, you know, exact numbers and, you know, a drawing that would indicate how far it is
Yeah.
from the lake.
It sounds as though, and I'll let other board members obviously speak for themselves, but it sounds as though where we're going is what we have before us this evening is not going to be acceptable for us. So what I would suggest is that you look at the information and we will be able to obtain the letter and some feedback, some general guidance from the Lake George Waterkeeper, which is not code, so it's not something you're required to follow, but it will give you some, from the environmental standpoint, the best guidelines in terms of improving the impact on the lake. And then you can certainly also work with Laura to talk about putting a, I guess I would say, a clearer plan. One way to do it would be to show what was last approved, and so that's sort of pre-existing, even though that it wasn't existing, you could say this was the previous approval, here's what we want to do. But I think for us to really be able to look at it with some comfort, it needs to be a more sophisticated presentation than this hand drawing. And understanding that your work in this shoreline area is not a small investment. It's not a small investment in terms of the environmental impacts on the lake, so it's worth doing right, I think. How do other board members feel comfortable with that general area? Okay. So there's, and Laura can give some guidance on this as well, but if we don't accept this tonight, which it sounds like we're not going to do, there's a couple of different ways that we can go with you forward to move forward with the project. One would be to just deny it, which sort of sets you back to square one and you would come back with a new application. The other thing to do would be to table it, to not act on it tonight, give you an opportunity to work on it, come up with some more information for us, and come back with a revised plan to present to us with the information that we're looking for, which, at least from my part, would be what was the most recent approval, and then the changes that you're proposing. So you'd have, here is what was approved, here is what we want to do. And with that, I'll put it out to other members of the board. Does that sound like an approach going forward?
Yeah.
Just a question as well.
Sure.
We also have the opportunity, we could just replant to the original approved plan, correct? And it would be fine?
Then the patio would have to be redone, but you did make that, hold on.
Well, the area would be the same. The patio block would just be up off of that stone, off the pea stone.
You wouldn't be able to, the river rock would remain river rock.
Correct,
It would,
yeah. So
yeah,
there's also the option, I know you mentioned a couple options, but there's also the option of just replanting and doing everything back to the original approved plan.
The stuff that died or that the deer ate, that kind of.
Replant that. It's something that I would address with, I would still suggest maybe tabling the application, reapproaching the zoning administrator and going over that detail. Once you've currently made a change to the site, so reestablishing that is part of your review. So I don't think it's that simple where you were going to say, I'm just going to replant it the way it was. I think you'd still have to do the review by board.
So that's my suggestion. I would communicate extensively with Laura. She is our resident expert on this. There is a lot of guidance offered in the code. There's also the Lake George Association and the Lake George Waterkeeper that can give you some guidance on that as well. And I'm sure you can come up with a plan that will be acceptable and improve the area as you intend.
Sure, okay.
Other board members have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's very good advice.
Okay.
Just one question, if I may.
Sure, all right. If you would, we'll let the waterkeeper come up with a question and follow up. Yes, sir.
Just one, I followed this project, I think, my first letter was when my daughter was 1 month old. She's now in 8th grade. And I never remember a patio being approved. I've followed, so I'd really appreciate if that plan can be provided, because I don't remember a patio.
Yeah, all
ever
that,
being.
that's all, obviously, we don't have that in front of us either, but it's all part of the record.
Yep,
So,
we can foil that, but okay.
and the applicant doesn't necessarily have to decide that they want to go back to the prior approval. They may still come forward with a modification. But, it will be we're going to be tabling it, so it will be coming back up, and we'll leave the public hearing open.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure. So, Laura, do you have any other input?
No, the application could be tabled to the first meeting in October or the second meeting, so it is up to the board.
Okay, do you think that's sufficient time to?
That is a question for the applicant. If they have, you would have to submit revised information by September 15th.
Yeah, if I could, I'm sorry, if I could ask you to come back up on the mic for you again. Yeah, so the next step in the process for us as a board is to do a resolution tabling your project, which means we're just setting it aside for the time being so that you can go back and do some more work on it with Laura, with whoever you can reach out to, the waterkeeper, you know, whatever, get some input. There's plenty of information in the town code, and then come back to us. So the date that we table it to is generally a specific date. So the next step is to decide when we would have you come back, which means how long is it going to take you to prepare the information that we're looking for? Laura just suggested the first or second meeting in October, which generally means that you would have to submit the information that would come to us for our review before that meeting by September 15. Do you think you can do that, or do you need some more time?
So we actually were gonna have our landscaper do this drawing, but the submission deadline we had for it, he just couldn't get to it. It's obviously their busy season now.
So maybe that person is already...
So that's a few weeks away, right? So
yeah,
maybe if we could get a few more weeks, I think that would, that would help.
So it would move into the November meeting, so you have till October 15th to submit information.
Yeah, that would be sufficient, for sure.
Okay.
Because we don't want to push the planning again, you know, I don't think you want to do that again.
To do what? Oh,
Push the planning.
we'd have to wait till the spring. Yeah, we'll wait till the spring on that one.
So in November, Laura, is there any elbow room? Do you have any preference as to first or second meeting?
I would suggest the first meeting.
First meeting, okay. So, Mr. Secretary, that would be November 17.
I'd like to take a look at that rental, and clarification on the rental agreement, whether it's 5-bedroom, 4-bedroom. I think that causes some confusion also.
Sure, yeah, and just for the, I honestly, I don't know the exact bedroom approval on the septic. I'm not sure. I'll look into that, and I can certainly bring it to the next meeting and clarify.
And Laura, to help us with some more information, I know that the waterkeeper has submitted a letter and some drawings. Would you?
I don't have the drawing yet, but that is
Would you?
something I can
Could you
share with
reach out to the waterkeeper and see if you could get that and give that to us? Excuse me, give that to us to look at as well, just for some items. Thank you. Anything else from members of the board before we entertain it? Okay, I guess we're ready to entertain a tabling motion.
Motion to table site plan modification 29-2020 at 67 Knox Road, Camp Knox, LLC, to the November 17th, 2020 Planning Board meeting with submissions to be entered by October 15th, 2020.
Okay, so again, between now and then, please reach out to Laura. She's going to be your best contact to give you guidance in terms of steps coming forward. And we'll look forward to seeing your project in November.
Okay. Thank you, board.
Second on that, Chairman?
We need the second and
Need
vote.
a second, I'll second it.
Okay. All right, we have a tabling motion that's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the tabling? Okay, Maria, can you call the vote for us, please?
Mr. Hunzinger?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mr. Deeb?
Yes.
Ms. White? Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Traver?
Yes. All right, see you a little later on.
Good luck, folks.
Thank you.
Next on our new business, we have Paul Luaz. I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Lejuiz, if I'm correct, is it Lejuiz?
Yeah, again, my apologies on the pronunciation, but anyway, this is site plan 33-2020. Laura?
Okay, so this applicant proposes to upgrade approximately 2,000 square feet of shoreline area, removal of vegetation, planting new vegetation, including some boulders for stabilization, and to update the existing pathway. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Anthony. I'm not Kirsten Cavalier as the way it's been advertised. Kirsten is president of Studio A. I'm a principal landscape architect. She had a newborn 3 weeks ago, so she's taken a few weeks off. So I'm kind of representing her in her place. For the Lejeunes, they're proposing to revegetate their shoreline parcel along the lake between Assembly Point Road and the shoreline. Parcel is currently developed with a boathouse and docks, and a path to get from the lake, from the road down to the lake. And the proposal is to not remove any trees. Trees will all remain that are there. There are a variety of trees that are in place. We've calculated and inventoried vegetation that exists, and we've given you an inventory of that in our application. It's mostly vines and shrubs that are native. They're in a variety of state of conditions of repair. And our proposal is to remove them and replace them with all brand-new indigenous plant materials and completely revegetate the entire area with new plant materials for a couple reasons. One is they use the shoreline for the recreation and sitting around, and the vegetation that's there is kind of scrubby, and they'd like to have decent, nice-looking vegetation and all new indigenous materials. Secondly, they would like to develop some privacy from the street, from the road. They get road noise, they get road people walking along the road, and I'd like to increase the buffer along the edge of the street so that they have some added privacy. Now, this is going to do a couple things. One is it will improve from the lake view some visibility past the street to the houses beyond, because we're proposing an arborvitae buffer along the street edge, and we're proposing a replacement of all the shrub materials in that area of the lake, of the site between the road edge and the shoreline. Now, in addition to what's happened there, there is some existing erosion problems happening near the shoreline. We'll be repairing those erosion problems by the addition of some filter fabric and stone, boulders that will be put in place to correct that problem. That should assist in mitigating runoff, mitigating sedimentation, and also improving the appearance of it. Now, I have Aaron Roberts is here. He's a landscape architect with our company. If you have technical questions, he did the inventory of existing materials, and he did the proposed planting plan, and so we're available to talk to you about that if you want. One other thing that's happening here, which is kind of interesting, is 16 Honeysuckle Lane really fronts onto Assembly Point Road, and it's really 223 Assembly Point Road next door to 219 Assembly Point Road. Those two lots are owned by brothers, and they have like a little family compound there. So if you look at the site plan, you'll see that there's an existing path that goes from 219 to 223 along the shoreline. That's important to the family because there's no improvements being proposed on it. It's there, it exists, but it assists them in traversing between the two lakefront parcels so that they don't have to go up to the road, up to the street, and go along the street to get back down to the other one, because they do recreate together, they do things together on the lakefront. So that's an interesting thing that they've done. It's no part of our proposal, it just exists, but we'd like you to know that. So if you have any questions for us, we'd like to answer them, and proceed.
Questions, comments from members of the board?
How do you get rid of Virginia creeper?
Pardon me?
How do you get rid of Virginia creeper?
That's a very difficult plant to get rid of. You'd have to dig it right out.
Yeah. No, as part of the proposal, they're going to take away the...
I was thinking the same thing.
We're not proposing to use any chemicals or anything like that.
Yeah.
There would be no pesticides, chemicals, herbicides, or anything used in this application.
So, I mean, if you look, I mean, I don't live far from Town Hall, but you can watch, especially when you drive down Blind Rock Road, you can see how it is gradually taken over, is the predominant green in the vegetation along the side of the road. And it's growing up all the trees and all the telephone poles and all the street signs.
Yeah, it's very
It's really taken over. And just in the last few years, I mean, you can literally watch it, you know, as it moves.
Just continued maintenance, you know, dealing with it as it grows up the tree so it doesn't strangle the
Yeah.
tree.
Other questions, comments? There is a public hearing on this application. I'll remind the public, if they would like to comment on this application, site plan 33-2020, by phone, they can call area code 518-761-8225. And Laura, I'll ask if there are any written comments.
There are no written comments.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience that wanted to address the planning board on this application? Yes, sir.
Can you wipe down the microphone? Sorry.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris Novitsky, Lake George Waterkeeper. I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity. And when you first look at this, it looks like the benefit to the lake, and I'm sure there's a lot of good to that, but I think there's some questions that we had, especially when we see 4,000 square feet of disturbance on the shoreline. We understand the desire of the project is to eliminate erosion and improve the plant health. Couple observations. Erosion is a result of stormwater runoff, and I think that was stated. But without addressing that, the erosion will continue. And I think if we put in mulch, or if mulch is put in, you know, you could see a bigger impact. So I'm just wondering if there can be any stormwater management or how that may be addressed to stop the washouts. Secondly, the existing shoreline appears to be well vegetated. Question was answered on tree removal, but it just seems like a lot of disturbance right on the shoreline. So questions we had was, I think they touched it, that'll be removed by hand, I think. Methods and equipment for removal of vegetation. We were going to ask about herbicides for removal. They said no chemicals. That could just be a condition if it goes forward. One thing, details are missing on boulder placement. They want to extend boulders down towards the shoreline. We just weren't sure on that. Is that going below the water line? Is there going to be material imported, topsoil, things like that, to replace what may have been eroded? And then also some erosion control measures, because as they said, they will be, I believe, physically removing the plants. There's going to be exposed soil, so we need erosion control on this just to protect any washouts. So we just felt that those needed to be addressed before the plan could be approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wanted to address the planning board? Yes, sir.
Chris, it's good to see you again.
Good to be seen. It's been a while, huh? It's kind of sad when you look forward to, you know, night meetings for a night out. Great to see you all.
I'm John Caffrey from Caffrey and Flower in Glens Falls. I'm representing John Kelly, who's the neighbor about 4 or 5 houses up the street, shares the same stretch of shoreline with the applicants. And we have a number of questions and concerns about the proposal. It's commendable that they want to improve the shoreline, but we're not entirely sure it's really an improvement. There's no topography provided with this application, but it's very steep. It's practically a cliff, about 15 feet high. Not much holding up the town road across the top there. And so any erosion, anything they can do to reduce the current erosion and prevent erosion from what they do is going to be very important. And like Chris said, if there's an erosion problem now, if you don't stop where that water's coming from, it's just going to happen again. It doesn't matter what you plant there. Same thing along the shoreline. The erosion happens on the shoreline when the waves crash up and erode the soil. I'm not sure that just putting large boulders on top of the dirt is going to solve the problem, because the waves work their way in along the riprap, along the shore, and erode the dirt from underneath. So I think they really ought to figure, before they do this, they ought to be asked to figure out where's this stormwater coming from that's eroding their land. The question that's not answered by this is, why is the existing vegetation not in good shape? If the light conditions and the soil conditions are not appropriate for growing healthy undergrowth there, how's it going to be any different just because you put different plants in? They're going to suffer from the same effects of whatever is causing the existing vegetation to not do very well. And then if you plant a big thick hedge along the road, that's going to block the sunlight from coming in from the west, which half the day, and it may make it even less light in there for the plants. What we don't know is, are the plants they're proposing suitable for that, for understory, or are those plants that belong in the sunlight? Some plants can do okay in the understory, some not. But being that it's the understory, you're not going to have really thick, lush undergrowth anyway. It's just not going to work. So that, I think, needs more attention from a specialist in whatever field that is, an arborist or whatever. The other concern about putting a arborvitae hedge along the road is, it's a very narrow road. There's barely can get 2 cars by there. And anytime you go up there on a nice day, there's people walking, they're pushing baby carriages, they're illegally driving golf carts. There's a lot of people on that road, and anything that narrows it by putting a hedge up against it is not going to help. It's just going to make it worse. And arborvitae have a tendency to do that. They expand and they start blocking things. And this came up in the last application. They talked about the things that were planted and then they died and they didn't replace them. As I read the code, the property owner is supposed to post a bond so that any plant on these types of applications, so if the plantings die, they'll have to replace them, and if not, the bond is there to do that. I see no mention of that in the application. Chris already mentioned the mulch. Mulch along shoreline just tends to wash into the lake. So I think what really needs to be done is for there to be a more detailed examination of the plants, of the appropriateness of the plants, whether they're really going to improve the situation or they're just going to do as bad. And I think you ought to have the town's engineers review it for the stormwater issues and the shoreline erosion issues. So, thank you.
Thank you.
How come the town can get Clorox wipes when none of the stores have them? You guys have a secret source?
Well, we knew this was coming and we got everything ahead of time.
Oh, wow, you're like the only person in the country who did that. That's pretty good.
While we're waiting here, on the arborvitae's on the road.
I had one other point I want to make.
Oh, sorry. Your time was up. No, I'm only kidding.
The last applicants mentioned the deer. A lot of what they're proposing to plant, the deer on Assembly Point are just going to hammer them. The bee balm, the lilies, things like that, I know from personal experience that deer are just going to hammer them. I think they really need to look at what the deer are going to eat and not eat, which isn't much. They'll eat almost anything. They'll eat the arborvitae. That's why it reminded me.
Yeah, it's like candy to them. Yes, sir.
So I'm one of the 2 brothers. So 2 of the questions raised, there are probably others I can address if anybody has questions, but 2 of them on placement of the boulders. I think they're pictured in the detailed drawing that we provided, but it's in between the arborvitae, number 1. Number 2, as for maintenance and overgrowth, I mean, we have the same landscaper who is putting forward this project to maintain all of the landscaping. And as for the arborvitae, I mean, I think it's the Kelly's design that we kind of copied as for the arborvitae being along the road. So, and as for the vegetation between the road and the docks, we took our presumed experts' advice on what would make the most sense for vegetation there. So if anyone has specific suggestions there, we'll take all that on board. But we just went with what suggestions were made to us based on looking out for what's best for the lake.
Thank you.
We have your name for the record.
Jonathan, and it's Lijouet. Tricky. And I don't know if this is. Yeah. I don't know if this was formally mine or my brother's, but I could represent him as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
We haven't gotten any phone calls for public comment. Do we have any written comments, Laura?
There are no written comments.
Okay, well, we'll close the public hearing. Follow-up questions, comments from the board? What's that?
Can we respond to a couple of those?
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. First off, just to assure everybody, there will be no machine work in here. It's all handwork. You don't even want to think of getting a machine in here of any kind. So it's all handwork being done. If you look at the photos of the erosion that happens there, it's little pockets here and there. There's no channel, there's no streamway, there's no drainway, there's no set course of drainway that's really affecting this piece of property. It's pockets here and there that just really want to be fixed. There's no work being proposed below the mean high water line. Everything is above the mean high water line. If we were proposing anything below the mean high water line, we'd need a joint DDC Army Corps permit for that. And so there is none. We're not bringing in any amended soils or any other amended materials. Plant materials that were selected are native to the area, they're indigenous to the area, and they'll grow in the soil condition. And they'll grow in the shade conditions that are there. The hedge on the lakeside, I have to correct that. We're proposing a green giant arborvitae. Deer don't eat the green giant arborvitae. That's one material that they don't go after.
Can you send me something on that, Jeff, to say that's true, not plant it?
So we've used it on Lake George, here and there, and in other places, and it's.
They like hosta, don't plant hosta.
Oh,
Okay.
my buddies look like lollipops.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you needed a bond on this, I'm sure that that's something that can be negotiated and worked on if plant materials happen to die or need to be replaced. We understand that that's a guarantee for the town to assure that this remains in its condition for the future, so the bonding is not really a necessary problem. I'd have to talk to the client about that, but if that's a condition that you request, that's certainly a condition that we would entertain. The arborvitae hedge, by the way, too, or the buffer, it's not going along on the road edge. It's not going on the shoulder. It's going on the Lejeu's property. It's not going to be narrowing the street travel corridor at all. So it's being placed off the street corridor. So that's something that we were conscious of. So those are my only really comments back. Aaron, do you have any others that you'd like to comment on?
What about the erosion issue? The changes you make, do you feel are going to reduce the erosion?
We're just patching up a few spots that we see that are a little soil exposed. And by putting in some filter fabric and putting some stones on it, I think that's sufficient. And again, if the town has a problem with their roadway and their stormwater drainage on their roadway, something the town should be addressing.
Yeah, that's something we've been talking about for a long time. Questions, comments from members of the board?
During the implementation of the planting, how will you prevent any siltation from getting into the wood?
Oh, I forgot, that's another comment that was made. We will be putting erosion control devices along the shoreline edge. It'll be a combination of hay bale backed up by filter fabric. We might even use some silt socks.
I mean, it's really amazing, especially this time of year, how much erosion you can get in a short period of time. Near our house in a neighborhood, they took down a bunch of large trees out of their front yard, and they brought in some fill to level out the yard, and they put in the silt fence. Well, the big heavy rains that we've had the last few days, a section of the silt fence failed, and there was silt for 3 houses down
Wow.
down the edge of the road. I mean, it was just unbelievable how much silt came out.
Yeah.
And when you looked at the lawn, you wouldn't have known it. But boy, it was in the road.
Especially when the site is under construction, it's not stable.
It's not
You
stable.
really have to have good erosion control measures in.
Yeah.
And the contractor will have to be on top of that every
Yeah.
day.
Yep.
Question for Laura. There was talk about something in the code about bonding. Are you familiar with that? Or
I'm very familiar with that. I'm happy, I'm glad
okay.
you mentioned it, because I didn't want to bring it up.
That's
It's
part
in-
of the port committee?
It's in the code, and it's always been in the code. I've been on the board for 20 years. We've talked about it a few times, but we've never required it of anyone, to the best of my knowledge.
If it's in the code.
It's in the code
not
that we can ask
subjective.
for it, but it's not something that we have ever done. We came pretty close on a couple of projects where there was, and I can't remember what the project was, but we had a particular property owner that had been cited several times and was taken to court a couple of times by the town for violation of site plan, and basically, unapproved changes to the site plan. And we were going to require it of him, and then, sort of at the last minute, and I can't remember why we didn't ask for it. Maybe the attorneys could comment on why we didn't, but we've never done it.
Perhaps not this one, but I can think of at least another application that we talked about this evening that might be worthy of consideration of a performance bond.
I think it's always a good conversation and good discussion.
Yeah.
I can just add just a comment. Typically with, because it's under site plan, if something fails, if some aspect of it fails, they're still required to replant that or redo those items. So whether you discuss a bond or whether as part of the code enforcement, if a plant dies, then it's supposed to be replanted.
Right.
And that would be a code enforcement item. But I don't have a preference to a bond or not, so.
Okay, thank you. I guess my feeling is, in this particular case, it appears the applicant is making a significant investment in what they believe to be an improvement in the vegetation, so I don't personally feel that a bond is needed.
Well, I think one of the things that he said is that the landscaper who's doing the installation is also the landscaper that maintains the property, so.
Right.
There's a vested interest by him to make sure.
Right.
That what he does is quality work, and then he's there to maintain it.
Yeah, good point.
Yes, Chris, I do believe that. You're right. I think Gould's Lawn and Landscaping is a contractor, I believe. And they will do the installation, but I believe they also, if I'm not mistaken, I think I heard Mr. Lejeune say that.
That's what he just said, yes.
They do the maintenance also in care. I've noticed his work all around the lake. When they do a lot of projects that we're involved in, they do the initial landscaping, then the client hires them to continue maintenance, and they're right on top of it all the time.
One more quick question.
Sure.
You mentioned no chemical use for the Virginia creepers. Is there any intention of using chemicals other than that for other
No.
removal?
No. And again, the question about maintaining other plant materials that are not wanted, with Gould's Lawn and Landscaping in there on a regular basis, maintaining stuff, they would be on top of that. That'd be some of the thing that they would have to be responsible for.
Okay, well, does the board feel comfortable moving forward? Okay. I believe we have a draft resolution.
I've been dreading this. I'm going to butcher your name. I apologize. But motion to approve site plan 33-2020 for Paul Lejeune.
All
right, for the draft provided by staff, conditioned upon the following. 1, waivers request granted. 2, the approval is valid for 1 year from the date of approval. Applicant is responsible for requesting an extension of approval before the 1 year time frame has expired if the applicant has not yet applied for a building permit or commenced significant site work. 3, adherence to the items outlined in the follow-up letter with this resolution, including items A through G.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second.
Can I add one additional item, is that the plans be updated with the erosion control measures, so that in the final plans, that information is available.
Did you get that?
Okay, including items A through G, H. And H, what am I putting in there to, a site plan to include erosion control measures?
Yes.
Yes, we'd be glad to do that, and we'll put the details for that right on the drawing when we submit it for final.
Yep.
I'll second the amendment.
Okay, thank
Can't
you.
second the amendment. I have first right to refuse it.
We have an amended motion made and seconded. Is there any further comment on the motion? Maria, can you call the vote for us, please?
Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Hunsinger?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mr. Teague?
Yes.
Ms. White? Mr. Traver?
Yes.
Thank
You're
you.
all set.
Thank you. I think we'll stand here for the next one, too.
Okay.
May as well.
So the next one is Jonathan Leger. Leger? Okay. Not even close.
You gotta try it again.
Site plan 34-2020, Laura?
Okay. So in this application, it's an upgrade of the shoreline to 1,700 square feet, and again, it's removal of vegetation, planting of new vegetation, installing boulders, and updating the existing pathway.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, how would you like us to handle this? Because it would be the exact same presentation as we just did. It's
Yeah, this is the adjoining property, and you're proposing the same modification using the same methodology as discussed previously?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
It's the parcel to the south, I believe, of the one we just discussed.
Okay,
And the path is gonna stay.
right.
Right. Right.
Any differences in methodology or anything regarding this?
The purpose of it is exactly the same.
Okay.
Create some privacy, create a landscape that is more touchable by human beings when they're using it, replace scrubby vegetation with more groomed vegetation, patch up a few small erosion control areas, and take down no trees, remove the shrub vegetation and replace it with indigenous natural materials. Pretty much the same plant materials as we just discussed at the parcel to the north. Again, the interconnect walkway remains as a convenience for the two brothers and their family so that they don't have to go out onto Assembly Point Road to go back and forth while they're recreating at the lake. I think that pretty much summarizes it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. And I'll also remind the public, perhaps viewing us on the YouTube channel, that if you wish to make public comment and you're not in attendance, you may call us at area code 518-761-8225 and ask the board if they have any follow-up questions or comments. This is evidently the adjoining parcel, so it is a separate application, but it's the same, essentially the same project.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if you want me to reiterate some of the conditions we talked, I can, like no machine work, all hand work on this project. No use of pesticides or herbicides or anything like that. No work below the mean high water line. It's all above the mean high water line. The same thing about the placement of the arborvitaes. They're not going to be placed in a manner which they will interfere with the width of Assembly Point Road. They'll be off the road, they'll be on the applicant's property. We believe that the green giant arborvitae is not a feed source for the deer. And let's see what else in here. That's the significant ones I think that we should mention.
Erosion control.
Erosion control, right, yep.
Okay.
Oh, and again, we will show the erosion control at the shoreline for the period of during construction, and immediately following construction it will remain in place until everything's stabilized.
Okay. Are there any written comments, Laura?
There are no written comments.
Okay, we've received no phone calls. Is there anyone in the audience that wanted to address the planning board on this application? Not Not seeing any, we'll close the public hearing. The extra condition to the draft that you requested on the first application should be on this one as well. So that same, yep. You're way ahead of me.
I'm ahead. All right, motion to approve site plan 34-2020, Jonathan LeJoy. Per the draft provided by staff, conditioned upon the following. 1, waivers request granted. 2, the approval is valid for 1 year from the date of approval. Applicant is responsible for requesting an extension of approval before the 1-year timeframe has expired if the applicant has not yet applied for a building permit or commenced significant site work. 3, adherence to the items outlined in the follow-up letter sent with this resolution, including items A through G, and H, erosion control measures to be included on the site plan.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Any discussion on the motion? Maria, can you call the vote for us, please?
Mr. Hunziker?
Yes.
Mr. McGowan?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mr. Deeb?
Yes.
Ms. White? Mr. Schaefer?
Yes.
Mr. Trevor?
Yes, you're all set.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jeff, you want these?
You want these?
Yes. You want these? Ooh. Not marked up.
Looking at the percentage plan between the two properties, it's kind of amazing.
All right now.
Anybody see that? You know, the percentage of the
What's
plan?
that? It's got revised anyway. It's got it in. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hey, nice presentation, guys. Here, look, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I was just checking out the percentage of the plan.
Yeah, so it's not a count, it's just a percentage of the existing.
Does anyone in the audience want to talk?
I saw that, because they knew all the votes.
How they look.
Mr. Chairman, we still have a meeting.
What's that?
You still have a meeting to end.
They get fuller faster.
You didn't adjourn yet, did you?
I know, we haven't adjourned yet. Before we adjourn, I just wanted to report to the planning board that before our meeting this evening, we had a meeting of the Planning and Zoning Technology Committee to talk about some of the technology that we've been working on in the town, specifically the iPad, what we have come to call the iPad project, and some other ideas going forward. I think we had a good discussion with Laura. We have some questions for her to answer for us. And we commented on some of the software that we found useful during the brief period that we were actually able to use the town-provided iPads. And I'll be writing a report and submitting that to members of the committee and to the town. So that's all I have. Does anyone have anything else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. We stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
See y'all.